Yes. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Post Up with David Grubb, right here on Boot Crew Media. Um, I was trying to figure out, what I wanted to do with this show today, and do I want to just go through the analysis part, or do I want to just go right into commentary? But I think by the analysis, we'll get to understanding the commentary and uh, what is going on with the New Orleans Pelicans um, at 0-3. Now, it's embarrassing at this point what's going on with the New Orleans Pelicans. It's embarrassing. Soon, it will be sad, right? Like the New Orleans Pelicans. Let me just start right here. The New Orleans Pelicans a week ago, 7 days ago, optimism was high. The league prediction obviously was about 32 wins. I said at the bottom that they'll probably finish with about 36 and a high of 43. But there were signs in the preseason, and I've said it. There were signs in the preseason that there were things that just weren't going right. They did not rebound well in the preseason. They're not rebounding well now. They didn't shoot particularly well during the preseason. They're not shooting well now. They didn't defend particularly well during the preseason. They're not defending now. They didn't pass the ball in the preseason. They're not passing it now. I want to show you. Now, last year was as bad as it gets, right? 21 wins. Everything went wrong. You're basically throwing out a G League team on the court many nights. You had controversy, you had injuries, you had all this stuff. It couldn't get worse. It couldn't be worse than that. Not so fast. All right, I want you to look at this. All right. We gotta look at this real quick. Hold on, let me get out of here. Hold on. Okay, I'll fix it again. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I'll bring that up. All right. What you're looking at up there is what you're looking at right there are last year's numbers for the Pelicans compared to this year's numbers. And when you look at this, what you're seeing is, what you're seeing is the red numbers indicate everywhere where the Pelicans are worse this year than they were last year. As bad as last year was, these are all the conditions up top. You see all those red numbers are where the Pelicans are worse this year. They are shooting 41% from the floor. They're shooting 41% from the floor overall. That's down from 45% last year. They're making less than 10 3-pointers a game. That's down from 12 from last year. They're shooting only 32 attempts per game. That's down from last year. 3-point percentage down from last year. 2-point percentage, the worst 2-point percentage in the entire NBA at 47%. The worst 2-point shooting team in the entire NBA. The one thing the Pelicans are doing fairly well is getting to the free throw line and making free throws. They're in the top half of the league in both of those. But look at everything else. Defensive rebounding percentage, significantly down. from last season. Offensive rating, significantly down from last season. Net rating, significantly down from last season. And pace, as slow as this team was last season, they are slower this season. Okay? They are slower this season. That is embarrassing, right? For the Pelicans, that is absolutely embarrassing. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, y'all, but that is absolutely embarrassing. The Pelicans in all 3 games, and people could talk, oh, they were close in games one. In all 3 games, the flaws were there. In all 3 games. They had 20 assists on opening night. They had 20 assists on opening night. When you go into a lineup, and I see, Jay saying Sadiq should start over her. Look, I'm gonna get into that in a minute. I'm gonna get into the player personnel parts of this in a minute. But you just start with the fact that they had no pride on Wednesday. But go back to opening night. Same problems, right? They lost the first and the third quarter. That's not new. That's not new. They lost the first and the third quarter. They didn't make enough threes. They turned it over too much. They didn't stop teams in transition. What did they do well in game 1 against, again, a team in Memphis that was missing Zach Edey inside? Okay? A team that was missing Zach Edey, that was missing Brandon Clark, another strong interior player. They were missing guys on the perimeter. They were, and you fouled out 2 of their centers. And in the last 5 minutes, you didn't even attempt a 3-pointer in the last 5 minutes of that game against Memphis. Not one 3-pointer in the last 5 minutes against Memphis. Makes no sense. Then you go to game 2. Again, you lose the third quarter, and you can't close. Again, Victor Wembanyama fouls out. The one weakness you have inside, he's gone. And you lose. And you lose at home. And then game 3, as soon as you heard that Zion Williamson wasn't playing, as soon as you heard that he wasn't playing, nothing else mattered. Because you knew they were going to lose. Like that part was done. You knew they were going to lose. But this is the thing with Zion. And there are people who are saying, oh, it was rest. It was rest. All of the possible answers are bad. All of the possible answers as to what was going on with Zion Williamson are bad. If he was hurt, it's game 3. It's game 3, and you're already hurt enough that you can't play a game. If he's hurt. If he's resting, it's game 3. You're supposed to be in the best shape of your life. You only played 30 games last year. You're not tired. You didn't log heavy minutes in the preseason. Your team is 0-2 at home in front of fans who are looking for a reason to quit now because they've watched you shit the bed twice. So you come into that as a franchise player, and I know a lot of people are going to try to throw it in my face, but hey, yeah, I said give Zion another chance this year, and this was going to prove it. And to me, this was the death knell for him. You're never going to believe again. Because if you can't get up for this, for game 3, when your team is 0-2, and you know what 0-3 means, you know what the schedule looks like ahead. You know how important it is to build confidence at this stage in the season with the team that has 9 new people on the roster. and how quickly a team can give up on a season. And you're telling me as the franchise player, you couldn't go? Jaylen Brown went. They were on a back-to-back. They played in Detroit. They changed time zones. And came down here. Went down to New Orleans. And they played. And they played with more energy. They played with more intensity. Pause. But to finish talking about Zion for a second, franchise player can't do that. If you're hurt, you got to tough it out. If they tell you you need rest, you got to say I'm playing. And if you asked out, then you got to go. If you asked out of game 3, if you said can't go tonight, sure, I can't go tonight, then you got to go. I can't defend it anymore. I can't give any rope anymore. And I don't do hyperbole. Y'all know that. You know, I don't get and do a whole bunch of hyperbole. But there's just some things that it's game 3. It's game 3. And the season is already falling apart. And it's not just because they're 0-3. And the Celtics came in looking bad, right? Did they play like a team that hadn't won a game? They didn't play that way. And they were on the road on the back end of a back-to-back. So, no, there's no excuse for what Zion did, you know, last night. But when you talk about the team too, when you talk about the team, and I'm gonna get to Willie Green, but when you talk about the team, you know you have to play fast. You don't run. You know you got to get back, but you don't get back on defense. Not on makes or miss. You gave up a lob. You gave up a lob on the opening play of the game. Like you're not locked in for the first play of the game in your building down 0-2. Yeah, we can look at the schedule. 0-6, it could get to 0-7, it could get to 0-8. Because if you're not going to do things well, it's not going to luck your way into a win. Look at those teams. Look at those teams. And the thing is, if other teams come in and play hard against the Pelicans, they know the Pelicans are going to break. You know they're going to break. You anticipate that they will give the game to you. When Peyton Pritchard, who is a great shooter, who is a great shooter, but should not be taking everybody in your backcourt off the dribble, getting into the paint like he's, prime Tiny Archibald. Peyton Pritchard, when dudes are coming off the bench, when Robert Garza, when those kinds of players are coming off the bench and making 3 threes. When you know the Celtics want to shoot 40 plus threes every night and you let them do it. You let them do it. You let them beat you on the glass. They had almost 4 players in double-figure rebounding for the Celtics. They were the worst team rebounding in the NBA coming into that game. Just on last night, they jumped past the Pelicans. The players don't want to do it for whatever reason. Now, we're about to get into one of the biggest reasons. But for whatever reason, even if it ain't the coach for all of them, even if it ain't the coach for all of them, You can't play like this. Rebounding is effort, where was the effort? Getting back on defense is effort. Where's the effort? Have you seen any semblance of offense? Have you seen any semblance of cohesion? And yeah, so it goes back to Willie Green. Goes back to Willie Green. You start there. At any company, the executives are the ones who have to take responsibility. And we'll get to Joe Dumars too, because he has to take responsibility for this product too. And the consequences that this team now faces because of his decisions. But when you talk about Willie Green, let's just look at last night. Let's just look at last night. And yes, Brian, you're absolutely correct. Coaching is one thing, but that does not excuse lack of hustle and effort. You're absolutely right. But let's start at just the beginning. Confusion about the starting lineup. Confusion about the starting lineup. And then to start Jeremiah Fears in his third game in the NBA against Peyton Pritchard, who is a veteran, and Derek White, who is one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. For a kid who is not naturally a passer, he is a scorer right now. That's what he does well. You're trying to build his confidence. And he's not ready to distribute to make sure that Jordan Poole gets touches. He's not ready to distribute to make sure that Trey Murphy gets touches. He's not ready to find Yves Missi consistently in the pick and roll. He wasn't ready to find Sadiq Bey. He didn't play with those guys enough in the preseason in situations that mattered for him to do that job. And Willie Green, as the head coach, is supposed to put his players in a position to succeed. We all were impressed by Jeremiah Fears in games 1 and 2. That doesn't mean he's ready to start in an NBA game in game 3. And Willie Green put him in that position. The energy was flat for the entire team. And you had a Jose Alvarado who was rested. And yes, Jose is limited, but the one thing that Jose Alvarado is going to do is provide you with energy. And that's what you needed after an 0-2 start. If you're going to start somebody else at that guard position without Zion on the floor to be your main distributor, Jose has started in NBA games. He's played against the Boston Celtics. If he gives you a hot start, then Jose is your asset. If he gives you a slow start, then you are justified in seeing who else is available to do that. But you don't put that kid. If you don't put that kid in that position this early in his career. You don't need to. He's going to fail, and he's already failed at different things. He's not a great defender, and get into that, but you don't put him in a position like this to fail. You don't do that. And that's what Willie Green did. I don't think you should have started Sadiq Bey because he looked at the Celtics and said, they don't have a true center. They're not going to rebound. So you put less rebounding on the floor, even though that's your weakness. If you had a second unit last night, and this is, obviously this is supposition, but if you were going to start one of the rookies, you start Derek Queen. You start Derek Queen at the 4 alongside Missi, and you can say, well, what about the spacing? Well, you weren't going to have any spacing anyway. They're not chasing Sadiq Bey out to the line. He made 3 threes, but they're not chasing him. The 2 guys that they were going to chase early on were going to be the 2 guys. They were going to chase Trey. They're going to chase Poole and try to get them off the line. If you had started Queen, or if you start DeAndre Jordan and Queen together, whatever. But if you start that group with Jose, then maybe you give yourself a better opportunity to get a good start. But you cannot go down 0-3 to start the season. Like I said, the easy thing to know is that no team in the history of the NBA has ever won a championship after an 0-3 start. Pelicans, just for that historic perspective, The Pelicans in their 0-3 starts have made the playoffs 2 times. And both of those times it took basic basketball miracles for them to make the playoffs. First time was in Willie Green's first season. They won 36 games and snuck their way in, obviously, with the play-in, 36 wins. But that season required a major overhaul. You had to make the trade to get C.J. McCollum and Larry Nance and all those guys. So you had a major overhaul of your roster. The other time they made it, they started 0-3 was the year Alvin Gentry, they won 48 and finished in 6th place. Made the playoffs the last week of the season, had to go on an almost ridiculous win streak, had to make another major trade for Nikola Mirotic. You lost Boogie Cousins that season, but that team got off to a bad start. But even then, man, D-Boy asking what's Willie's record when he gets fired, man, he should be getting fired. The record, if he goes on this road trip and comes back and they're winless, fire him. Fire him. Like, what are you waiting for? Joe Dumars, since the question has been asked, we're going to go to it. Joe Dumars put the entire season on the line, right? Whether you like Queen or not, the price was paid. You gave up 2 lottery picks, potentially, 1 for certain, but you gave up 2 first-round picks for this season to win this season. So you put everything in to do that, and you let your team get off to an 0-3 start, and Joe certainly looked upset against the Spurs when the Spurs were just running up and down the court, getting layups. 20 buckets in the paint in the first half for the Spurs. So he didn't look happy watching that. But when you bet everything on this season, when you put all of it on this season, you can't afford to give away an entire month. Because when you look at the schedule, this team could be 2-8 if they're lucky by Thanksgiving. 2-8, 3-9, whatever. That could be a lucky outcome the way things are going. You have a GM who it seems was given a mandate, though he denied it in his opening press conference. It seems clearly that Joe Dumars was forced to keep Willie Green as head coach. And when you look at that kind of situation, the players aren't stupid. And we've talked about this before where I said, if people aren't bought in, if they look at Willie Green and they know he's temporary, they know that they're going to outlast him because they have their contracts. If they know they're going to outlast him and they don't respect him, and it's clear they don't, because at the very least, if you were bad, you'd play hard for a coach you cared about. Even if you're really bad, you'll play hard for that coach. The Pelicans are absolutely too talented to be playing this poorly, even though I still believe that the roster is poorly constructed and has 2 glaring holes, and that's on Joe Dumars. The fact that you came into the season without any experienced point guard on the roster. It didn't have to be a starter, but you came in this season without any experienced point guard on the roster, and you came into the season without an experienced center, and you had to go find a 37-year-old DeAndre Jordan, and you had to get him off the street and guarantee his salary, though you don't know how long he'll play well. DeAndre Jordan could be worn out in a month. His back could hurt. He could just not be good at 37. It could just happen like that. And you were forced into the position where you had to give him a guaranteed contract because you screwed up all summer when there were centers available. And you say, to be fair, they view Poole as the point guard. What indicator gave you that? Okay, let's do this. We're going to jump right to this. Jordan Poole as the point guard. This notion, and I don't understand why they thought that was going to happen. It makes no sense to think of Jordan Poole being a point guard for this team. So look at this. These are Trey Murphy and Jordan Poole's averages from last year, which are arguably both of their best seasons as pros. Okay? So the bottom is Jordan Poole last season, 4.5 assists. That's a decent number, but that's not talking about somebody who should be running your offense. And all off season, what did I say? Who's going to run the offense? So you look at the rest of this. Steals, look at the numbers across the board. Trey and Jordan. Trey shot 45%, Jordan shot 32%, 43%. They were making about a combined 6.5 threes per game on 17 attempts, shooting roughly 37% from three combined. They were both net negatives last season, but a net combined of 15.4, plus minus of minus 15.4, and a minus net of 22.8 combined. But again, you see all these red numbers are worse. This is Trey up top. His scoring has dropped by a third. Jordan Poole scoring the same amount of points, but look, rebounding down, though he's playing more minutes than he did last season in Washington. Assists down, though he's playing more minutes. Trey's assists up, Trey's rebounds up, steals, both of them down. Jordan has been terrible defensively so far to start the season. Field goals made, both of them down. Field goals attempts, Jordan up, Trey down. Field goal percentage, both of them shooting below 40% from the floor. 3-point percentage, Jordan is still shooting below his number for last year, though basically the same. But Trey Murphy, 22% from three. The attempts are down. I've put, it's been my thought that this team needed to excuse me, um, the team needed to get out of their top three players every night. The number that I've been using is they need to get 50 field goal attempts. They need to get 18 3-point attempts, and they need to get 16 free throw attempts. They've not made that numbers. They've not made those numbers in any of the games this season. Not once have they hit all three of those marks. And you can say, look, there's no one. Shout out to Lito in the chat. But there's no one on this team playing well. And, I said there are systemic problems that come from coaching, but Jordan Poole has not played well. Jordan Poole hasn't played well. He's not made good decisions on offense. He's been a turnstile on defense. He's not been able to finish at the rim. The two things he's done well is he's shot the three fairly well again, 38% basically. He's gotten to the free throw line at a higher rate than he has. But if you look at the worst lineups, Jordan Poole is in a lot of the worst lineups, particularly because of his defense. His efficiency has been lower offensively than it was last year. His defensive rating is worse than it was last year. And again, some of those things are systemic because, as Brian puts it, there is no system. They are slower than they were last year. They are playing at a slower pace than they did last year. And what did I say before the season started? If you can't rebound, you can't run. If you can't rebound, you can't run. And the Pelicans can't run because they can't rebound. They're the worst rebounding team in the NBA on the defensive end. They're a fine offensive rebounding team because they miss so many shots. As I showed you earlier, they're the worst 2-point shooting team in the NBA. No one can finish. Trey's missing layups. Poole's missing layups. Fears is missing layups as he did last night. Everybody's missing. And they're not even taking mid-range shots. So you don't have that. Though Brandon Ingram, we ain't even going to get into that up him. But you're not even taking mid-range shots, and you can't make twos. It's so much effort. And, every shot is a hard. Absolutely. It's so much effort. I put this on Twitter. I said, there are guys doing way too much and nothing at all at the same time. because they're working way too hard. They're not working as a unit. You don't see off-ball screens. You don't see player movement. And again, some of these things have been consistent for years. So that's not on again for a team that 9 different players in they had last year. So that's the systemic problem. But those things, defense, rebounding, movement, those are effort. Those are choices. You don't run the floor, those are choices. You don't get back on defense, those are choices. So no matter how bad it is on the sidelines, it's you on the court. So nobody gets a pass. There are quite literally only 2 players on the entire team who have both a positive plus minus and a positive net rating. Zion and Eve Messi. And they didn't play the 3rd game. Both of them only played 2 games. 2 players is net positives. And you could get that for Zion, over those first 2 games. And Eve has been solid. He tried to do a little too much at the beginning of last night's game, but then settled down. But what is this team? It is mismatched. It is not built to play the style that it wants to play. It is not willing to play the style that it wants to play. They're shooting fewer threes than they did last year. Like, they're shooting fewer. So you saw Boston, they're playing guys who they got off the street this summer. And they still got up their threes. They still ran the floor. What have I said all off season? Your identity is what you do every day, no matter who's on the court. Either you're committed to something or you're not. Either you're playing group tempo basketball or you're not. And hey, Antonio Daniels is my guy. I love that dude. But when he says, watching Boston play, that's the way the Pelicans want to play. That's not the way the Pelicans want to play. Because if they wanted to play that way, they would. If you wanted to run the floor, you would. If you wanted to defend, you would. If you wanted to grab rebounds, you would. They're attacking the basket and not making twos. Because you can't attack the bucket when everyone knows. You can't attack the bucket when everyone knows that's where you're going. Like the dribbles are all solo attempts. The assists are only coming because somebody is attacking the bucket looking for their own shot. They're not driving to create, they're driving to score. So the defense is playing them like they're driving to score and they're taking away the good shot and guys are forcing up bad shots. Because the offense is not opening the right looks because there's no movement. The defense gets to stay exactly where it is. There's no screens. If guys aren't moving on the opposite side of the court, then the defense just gets to stand there and watch. And you don't have anybody prolific enough at the things that could help loosen up the defense. Nobody on this team can hit a floater, apparently. Nobody on this team can hit a pull-up jump shot. And let's talk about the insanity that Willie Green did in the first 2 games of playing Herb Jones at point guard. Yeah, Herb shot 3 for 5 from 3 in opening night and had a good shooting night last night because he got back off the ball and all of his points came the exact way he should score them. Corner 3, layup off a cut, score a transition, another 3 off the ball swinging from one side to the other. Yeah, Willie Green played center against. Why? What are you doing? Herb Jones should not be playing point guard on offense. He should not be creating. All of his offensive skills are things that are off the basketball. He is a connector as a passer. He's the guy who gets the hockey assist. He's a screener. He is a cutter. And you put the ball in his hands to be a decision maker, and then you wonder why he failed at that job because you're asking him to be aggressive and create for other people and drive to the bucket. That's not what he wants to do. That's not what he's capable of doing. And again, your coach has to put you in position to do well. Her played better last night, played decent in game one, played the worst game of his life in game two. But who's played well besides Zion in the 2 games? And even that wasn't enough because he turned it on late in game two. Because no one is figuring out what they want to do early. Pelicans, when they come out on the court in 2 out of 3 games in the first quarter, utterly clueless. Don't know where the ball's going. They don't know what they're doing. It's just guys out on the perimeter trying to create and go. At this point, no, nobody can salvage this season. And this is the thing. For all the devaluation of Trey, if you want to, whoever you want to devalue right now, none of these guys, Jordan Poole's not being used properly. Trey Murphy's not being used properly. Even Messi not being used properly. So I don't know. The part that I would judge all these players on right now is their effort. You can't be happy with the effort that they show. That's the one thing you can put on the players for sure. Like I said, they have not been put in a position to win. They have not been. They have not been given any kind of edge. And what have I said time and time again? What advantage has Willie Green ever given you as a head coach? In what area? He's not a gifted communicator. The man doesn't even know his team. Every time he comes to the arena, it looks like he just showed up for the first day of work. You get into these press conferences and they ask you, what's going on with Zion Williamson? And you can't give a straight answer. And that has been the case since you got to New Orleans. Does any head coach know less about his own team than Willie Green? This was an opportunity. The New Orleans Pelicans had the opportunity to seize control of sports in New Orleans. The Saints were going to be bad. LSU is collapsing. The Pelicans had it. They had the opportunity. And in a week, they've ruined it all. So yeah, it is hard to gauge what guys are doing when they've been ruined by poor coaching, but it's inexcusable. It is inexcusable the effort that the players have given so far. Inexcusable effort. Because you have watched teams do the little things better than you, and you can't get beat at the little things. Because all of the little things, the reason they put the hustle stats up there is because it shows you which team wants it more, right? The Pelicans have not earned a single win. And you can say it's just it's always all of the things. Painful irony of last night, the painful irony of them winning the third quarter and losing the other 3. That may be one of the greatest indignities suffered by Pelicans fans. The Pelicans hadn't won a third quarter since last season in a game that they lost in Brooklyn. They hadn't won a third quarter since March. They finally win one. They lost all 3 other quarters. Williamson has to do something here. How can you watch both of your franchises embarrass their fan bases and do nothing? And if you and Joe Dumars, if you allow this to get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, and the Pelicans are 2-8, 3-7, 1-9, and you allow Willie Green to keep coaching, it's malpractice, dude, because of the pick. Because of the pick. What are Pelicans fans gonna do if the Atlanta Hawks end up with the number 1 pick in the draft next year? Of all teams, what are y'all gonna do if the Atlanta Hawks end up with the number 1 pick in what is being called the last great draft of this decade? You were playing against the worst version of the Boston Celtics that we've seen in years. The worst. You knew coming into this game, the one thing that Boston did well was not allow points in the paint. So that meant you were gonna have to shoot threes. You were also without Zion, who took away 18 points in the paint. You knew you had to shoot threes. You couldn't do it. You couldn't generate shots. You couldn't generate speed. Couldn't generate tempo. Couldn't create assists. They are worse at everything this season than they were last year. They are worse at everything than they were last season. They're an embarrassment of a team. And I don't see a way out, even changing coaches. It is very rare for a team that to turn it around in that kind of meaningful manner without getting a superstar player at some point. So at, now if you're the Pelicans, now you're selling low on everybody because nobody's playing well. So anybody you're trying to trade right now, everybody's going to try to fleece you. And after this now, do Pelicans fans is the trust broken for Joe Dumars too? Already. If Joe's done, if Willie's done, if Zion is done as a franchise player, then tear it all down and try to get some number 1 picks back, get some first rounders back. I haven't seen DeJounte Murray. I hope that's sarcasm. DeJounte Murray can't fix this. You saw DeJounte Murray hadn't played defense in 3 years. Even before he got hurt, he wasn't playing defense until they can stop people and get rebound. And this dude is coming off an Achilles injury at point guard to run offense with dudes he has not played with. He's never played with this group. He's played with some of them at different times. At trade bait, and what would you give up for a dude who's making 30 plus million coming off an Achilles, who hasn't been able to shoot the ball and was a suspect defender and isn't a great 3-point shooter? I don't know what you get at this point because you are selling distressed assets and people know you're vulnerable. They know you need at this point. But it seems to me your best course of action is to just build around Fears and Queen and Misi and just say, we got 3 guys and we're just going to be bad now and try to get picks for everybody else. And you're like, oh, it's game 3. I told you last year. I told you the year before that. I said there's flaws and they're not fixable. Turn it around for what? Like, tell me, what does turning it around mean to you? To just get out of the lottery and to win 38, 39, 40 games? Again, people don't want to get out of next year's draft because it's such a deep draft. And Mike Malone ain't going to come. Do you think Gail is gonna you think Gail is gonna pay $20 million a year for a coach? Do you think Gail Benson is going to pay $20 million a year for a coach? I wouldn't be surprised if Willie Green makes less than DeAndre Jordan. And y'all gonna come up here and say that she gonna go out and pay Mike Malone? What in Gail Benson's history has she ever paid a coach a lot of money besides Sean Payton? She ain't paying nobody. You better find somebody. You better find somebody. You got to hit a home run off somebody's bench at this point. Because no experienced winning head coach is taking this job. Yeah, you can say Mike Malone's last contract, but look what Tibbs and those guys were making. Mike Malone has a championship. He's not coming back for $8 million. You can say she shouldn't have a choice. She's the richest, most powerful woman in the NBA. She doesn't have a choice. The state is subsidizing her. No NBA owner is losing money. Her franchise has grown in value exponentially. What do you mean she doesn't have a choice? Optimism is one thing, but history should tell you who people are. He went out and found a dude who had not been in a front office for over a decade to run the franchise. She won't pay the coach. And you just assembling rosters to get everybody to get excited in the offseason. And you are nothing more this season than a glossed up version of last year's team. And you ain't even playing as good as they did. You're going to come to New Orleans for what? For what? Like, they could play better under another coach. Absolutely. They could do better. But do you believe now, having watched the effort, like that part, having watched the effort, that this is a team you can trust? They absolutely can win some games. Or do you trust the Pelicans? Do you believe in the Pelicans? Or are you just hoping that they get it right? And there's no indication that they're going to get it right. There's no indication that they're going to get it right. So you're going to go up to Denver, where you've lost 4 in a row. I mean, you've lost 4 in a row to them. You've lost 6 out of the last 10. So you go to Denver. You got nothing for Jokic. Jamal Murray's playing very well right now. You can't stop anybody from getting to the bucket. You're not running in transition. Pelicans are going to be 0-4. And just for history's sake, in the seasons that they've started 0-4, they've never won more than 34 games as a franchise. The worst they did was 18 wins. So you got between 18 and 34 wins at that point. The Western Conference. In the Western Conference, you're going to start 0-4? Come on, man. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all hanging with me. I appreciate everybody's comments. Please leave those likes underneath. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. We'll do this again next week, maybe sooner if need dictates, if something happens. But I look forward to doing this again next week. I appreciate y'all sticking with me while I am a little ways away, but I have been watching very closely and just trying to stay involved and watch what this team is doing. And God, man, it is disappointing. Until the next time, y'all know how to follow me at DM Grub across social media. This has been the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boo Crew Media. Y'all have a great night.